Okay, welcome and good evening. So hopefully you guys made it here okay. And so thanks for joining. This is our first session. I think there's still some students signing on, but let's go ahead and just get it started here. And so I think that the enrollments kind of got up and down the last week. I've been trying to keep track of all the students. I think we have 13 students at the moment. And so we'll see if that stays or goes down or goes up. But I think uh, one person just added today. So I think, let me see if that. Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think Bryce Ramirez. I think you just got my email with information. So good you're here. And I think everybody else got my few couple emails with the information and the web links. And so hopefully using getting to the WebEx meeting wasn't much of a problem. And yeah, we've got almost all the students here. All right. So I don't know if you guys have used WebEx before, or if you use WebEx or Zoom in the last couple semesters. But I've been using WebEx. It's pretty easy to use. If you're familiar with Zoom, it's very similar to Zoom. I've been using it since day one because Laverne didn't have Zoom initially when the pandemic first started, and so I've been using WebEx ever since. And I think you'll get the hang of it if you haven't used it. So okay, everyone is here for BUS525, which is going to be economics of the firm, and the only prerequisite for the class is. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So yeah, you can because of the background noise, I usually have students just have their sound off. But if you do have a comment or need to ask a question, or if I ask the class something, just go ahead and turn your sound off and anytime you want. But just if you're not going to talk, or if you're not, just to have multiple students not talking at the same time, it's probably best to leave your sound off. But then obviously turn your sound on if you have a question or if you're answering one of my questions. Okay, so let's I assume that everyone has is able to get on the Blackboard page, correct? And so if there's any problems getting on the Blackboard page, let me know, but I'll assume at this point that everyone is able to get on Blackboard. And so here's the Blackboard page. We'll kind of go, the first things we'll do is we'll kind of go through the syllabus. So I'll run you through the Blackboard page, and then we'll do the material for today. So, okay, so just any questions or comments before we get started, just about general things, before we start going through the logistics? Okay. All right. So it looks like there's a few students still yet to sign in, but most students are here. And also, all the WebEx meetings and meetings and the virtual meetings will be recorded. And so if you miss something or need to rewatch some of the videos, or you miss some of the material, or like your Wi-Fi goes out or something, everything will be recorded. Everything will be posted on my YouTube page. And so all the lecture material and all the meetings will be available after the fact, just in case you miss something, or there's some kind of time conflict. So you will be able to catch up. But I do encourage all students to come to all the meetings. But if for some reason you can't, or you miss something, you want to rewatch some of the problems again, everything will be available on my YouTube page, including this content so far. And I'll show you where that is in a few minutes. Okay, so maybe we'll just start by going over the syllabus, yeah? So the syllabus, I emailed some of you that added the class more than a week ago. If you added the class today or yesterday or a few days ago, you might not have got the syllabus via email, but it's on the Blackboard page here. Uh, so if you go down to syllabus, okay, you can just open this one up, syllabus BUS525 summer. All right, let's run through this first. Usually do the syllabus first. Okay, and also here there's some active links for the university's updated web pages on the COVID-19 situation at the university, and also the accessibility services updated page. So if you have any questions on any of those things, please feel free to look at those updated links or let me know if you have any questions. But both of these pages are updated pretty frequently. All right, so anything you need on there is there. It looks like we're doing all virtual for the rest of the summer term, but there's some information here. I'm not sure if some students here are on campus or off campus or what, but personally, I've not been on campus. I've not been allowed to be on campus since March 2020. So looking forward to going back in the fall, but also looking forward to our the last summer, the last term of online classes. Okay, and then also this is updated. So if you have any special considerations, you need extra time or anything like that, let me know. But those two web pages are updated pretty frequently. Okay, syllabus. So I just updated this. My full name, James Joseph Hoffman. I usually go by Jake. You're welcome to call me that. I do have my cell phone here in case you need it. If there's some kind of emergency.
Professor,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. Is there any way you can make your screen any bigger? It's like really hard to see.
Oh,
Or is that like as much as it
well,
will go zoomed
well,
in?
I'm not. So what does it look like to you? I think.
It's just like really small words, like kind of blurry, so it's hard to see it. If you can, it's okay. I can pull it up separately.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't. I mean, from my perspective, it looks clear. So I'm not sure what you're seeing on your end. Uh,
Mm,
so can
okay,
is
that's fine.
yeah.
I can
So
pull it up.
okay. Is anyone else having problems seeing the screen? Because I just right now I think I'm just sharing my Google Chrome, and so you should be able to see this whole like the whole page or not.
Yeah, it's just the words look a little blurry, but maybe it's just my
Oh, oh,
computer.
oh, okay. Oh, you mean like the words on? Okay, I can make it bigger. Like
Yeah,
that.
like that. Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah,
Okay.
that's much better. Thank
All right.
you.
There we go. You're welcome. Okay, got it. All right. So yeah, I'll try to do that. Yeah. Okay. It just yeah, it looks really big from my. It looks like yeah. Okay. Yeah. So where are we? So I've just got through my name. So my name, um, James Joseph Hoffman, and I usually go by Jake. You can call me that. I have my cell phone here in case you need that. If there's an emergency or need to get a hold of me, I usually say the preferred contact method is email. And here's my school email address. And I've already sent a few emails. Oops. Whoops. Okay, I've already sent a few emails to the class, and I'll try to update the list once I know the full number of students. We had 11, we had 12, then we had 11, now we have 12, and now I think we have 13. So if it stays at 13, I'll get that email list updated. But the couple people that added, I should get you included in the big group emails pretty soon. But I think everyone has the link to the WebEx meetings, which is good. Okay, so cell number. I'm pretty good at checking emails, so if you have any questions on anything when the material comes up, I'm pretty good at checking emails. And so, unless there's an emergency, you can email me first. But feel free if you need to get a hold of me or need to tell me you're going to miss class or something comes up, you can use my phone number. Okay, so I'm not sure if anyone here has had me as a professor in the past. I do teach 500B. I haven't for uh, a year or so, maybe, but I have taught this class a bunch of times, so it's possible that I have taught you 500B at Laverne back when we all were on campus, or it's possible you took that from somebody else, but that really is the only prerequisite for this course. And so hopefully you have some background on some of the introduction to economic stuff, but that's really the only prerequisite there. Okay. I have the textbook I'm going to be using is this one, which is Managerial Economics and Business Strategy ninth edition. And so it's it's quite possible that a lot of students don't have the textbook yet, or you're rent it or deciding whether to buy it, whatever. But this is the textbook I'm going to be going through, and so it's okay if you don't have it right now. You don't need it right this second. But I would recommend getting a copy or sharing it with somebody else or seeing what you can do on that. I think it's not the newest edition, so it should be a little bit cheaper. And I do provide a lot of material, uh, just in addition to the textbook. I kind of, but you can see if you need it in the coming months. Um, it says someone is in the lobby, and I'm not sure what that means. How do I? Oh, there we go. Okay, I think I just admitted the person in the lobby. Okay, great. Huh. So normally that maybe that's a new thing where if you come in late, I have to allow you, but I don't know. Okay. All right. So there's the textbook. Um, okay, this stuff you can read. Okay. So here we go. Here's the updated outline that I prepared maybe a week ago or so, or kind of modified the dates. We have 10 meetings, or we normally have 10 meetings, but because one of the meetings falls on an observed holiday, which is July 5th. Okay, so basically we're only going to have 9 meetings, and so that's okay. I was able. I mean, usually I do this class with 10 meetings, but I just kind of moved some of the material from this day into some other days, and so we're just making note that we're not going to meet, which would be meeting 5 July 5th, because that's an observed holiday. So I just moved some of the material to different days, and so basically, like I want to say next time, meeting 2 and probably meeting 4 will be the longer meetings because I moved some of the material that I would do in a full day to kind of combine it into like a day and a half. And so we'll have a couple. I mean, I'll try to keep. So the meetings here are scheduled for what's the time? 6 to 9:50. We're definitely not going to go till 10 o'clock. And so what I usually like to do, um, which most students like, is just to kind of go through and not take any breaks. And so I'll try to keep it, or I'll try to keep it around 2 hours. So like 6 to 8. And then if you need to take a break, go ahead and do what you got to do. But I'll just try to go straight through because I've seen that if I try to take breaks or if we try to come back, then there's problems. People don't come back, stuff like that. Okay, so I think the best way that I found is just kind of do it all at once. And we're definitely not going to go the full time. And so most classes, I'll try to keep about 2 hours, so 6 to 8, if that works for everyone. Okay. All right. So, and there again, there might be a couple days where I go over that because I have to get the material from would be meeting 5, and so I'd say next week meeting 2 might be a little bit longer, and also meeting 4. But other than that, I'll try to keep the meetings at around 2 hours, and we'll just go straight through like 6 to 8 o'clock. Okay, and so that's usually what students like, and I think that's what we'll try to do. Okay, so yeah. Okay. So here's the meeting information and the material and the chapters that go with it. So today we'll do kind of an intro, chapter 1. Okay, 6 to 8 sounds good. Perfect. All right. So if again if there's any issues with 6 to 8, or if some students like really want me to take breaks, let me know. Also, everyone sees the chat feature here. So the chat feature is going up, or the chat feature is up here on the right. And so anytime you want to post something or ask a question without turning your sound on, I leave the chat feature up. So just go ahead and post any comments or questions up here. Okay. And so so it seems like um, 6 to 8 sounds good. But if that doesn't work, then let me know. Okay, and again, all the lectures, including this one, are recorded and will be put, and you can view them on my YouTube page. And so if you miss something for some reason, you can catch up and watch it. Okay. Okay. So these are the chapters and the material and the topics that I'm going to try to do. And so we're not going to do the whole textbook, but a good portion of it, about 10 chapters. And so today we'll kind of do, so the way this little course outline and schedule is designed is here's the meeting. So this is the day, this is the date, which is today. And this is what I want to do today, which is chapter one, kind of intro, and then chapter two, a little review of supply and demand. And then the assignment due is what's due that day. So obviously nothing's due today because this is the first day, but usually the material that we cover, the homework for that material we do the next week. So next week you'll have the homework chapter one and two due, and so on. So you can see that each little column or row has the date, the material we're going to cover, and then what's due that day. So like we're going to do this stuff next week, and this is due next week. All right, and I'll keep highlighting what's due. Um, okay, and so the gist of it is we'll have a meeting, and then um, oh, so the question is it just due before class? So uh, yeah, I guess I didn't really specify time, and so it's due. Everything is due on Monday except for the final exam. And so just anytime that Monday is, so like the first assignment is due next Monday, June 14th. And so let's just say anytime Monday, so technically by midnight, I guess, if you really want to use the whole day, but it's not due before class, it's just due that day sometime. Okay. So all the assignments will be due on Mondays. Like basically you have something due each Monday, except the holiday Monday, July 5th. And so you'll have a couple weeks where you have two assignments due. You have 2 weeks to do them because of the holiday. And then note that because I want to get your grades in, um, I usually try to get the grades in earlier than later. If you can get your final exams to me by Thursday of finals week, then I can get your grades in probably Friday or Saturday. So everything's due on Mondays, except for the take-home final, which is due Thursday, August 12th. So you have a little bit less time to do that, but you should have plenty of time to do it. Okay, so I'll come back to this outline, but and I'll try to keep it. I'll try to make sure we stick with it and don't fall behind. But if we do, I'll let you know. But as of now, we're here. We'll try to do chapters one and two today. The material, then the homework for chapters one and two will be due next Monday, anytime next Monday. So yeah, I didn't specify a time, so just you know, by 11:59 p.m. on June 14th. Okay, so we've got some homework assignments. Basically, one homework assignment's due each week. I have some longer homework assignments, which is this one here, the elasticity one, and then the oligopoly one, which we'll talk about separately, some kind of data analysis. And then you have a couple exams, which are just take-home exams. So you have a midterm exam take-home and a final exam take-home. And nothing is timed in this format. And so you can kind of think of the take-home exam as just like a bigger homework. And so everything is going to be due uh, the, the following Monday. Okay. Um, yeah, and so I think the plan is to get the first four meetings of stuff material will be on the first midterm, and that'll be due after the break, July 12th, and then we'll start the next group of material for the final. Okay. All right. So try to take a look at the schedule, and yeah. Okay.
Is the homework going to be like out of the book or like something
Oh, okay. Yeah. So good question. So
you
I've already
post?
posted. Yeah. So I've actually already posted, I think, all the homeworks. And so let me get to that when I go through the rest of the Blackboard page. But yeah, so I've there's pre-prepared homework assignments that are on Blackboard,
On
and I'll show you that.
Blackboard.
Yeah. So like the one we're gonna do today for chapters 1 through 2. Here it is. So here's the chapter 1 homework, and here's the chapter 2 homework, and I'll bring those up in a minute. But yeah, so it's I've prepared a set of questions for each chapter, and those are already on Blackboard. So those are the ones for chapter 1. Those are the ones for chapter 3, and so on. And there's some other ones too. Yeah, but they're assignments that I've already
Oh, okay,
pre-prepared.
cool.
Okay. Okay. So any more questions on the schedule here and kind of what this? So just take a look at the dates. If you have the textbook and want to do the readings before class, then you've got the material there. And so we're basically going to do each meeting we'll do that material, and then everything except for or every meeting except for today, there'll be something due. And so make sure you take a look at what's due that day, and that's how the little schedule here works. Okay, so here is the breakdown of the grading, I guess. Um, so I'm probably not going to take attendance every meeting because some students sign out and sign in. There's but I'm just going to keep this as 5%, and I'm basically going to give I'm basically just trying to give you 5% for attending the WebEx meetings. And so unless a lot of students start missing meetings and get fall behind, I'm not going to worry about that. And so I'm just going to take your word for it. It looks like everyone's here now, or most students. Yeah. So just I'm not going to be too strict on this, but try to come to the meetings. If you can't for some reason come to the meeting, then make sure you watch it. And unless you tell me, or unless I notice that you're not coming or you're not keeping up with material, then I'll start taking roll maybe. But for now, just I'm basically just trying to give you 5% of the grade for coming to the WebEx meetings. Okay, so that I mean it's a good portion of your time to come up 2 hours a week. So just come to that. Uh, that's 5%. All right. So if you as long as you stay for another hour and a half or whatever it is, um, you already got points. Okay, and then so just coming to the meetings is 5%. The homework is going to be, I guess, the bulk of the material, which is going to be 55%. And so you have um, a homework for each chapter, and then there's some additional homework assignments that are a little bit longer. And so each thing here you see homework. These are all the assignments. So there's quite a few of those. And then the two exams will be 20% each for the take-home exams. Okay, so most of your uh, grading is on these three portions. So just do the homework and do the exams, and yeah. Okay, and there's the grade policy that's set by the university. That. All right, and then this is the schedule of the meetings, which is just it's every Monday for 10 weeks, 6 o'clock, um, except for meeting 5, or I guess it's not meeting 5 because we're not meeting, but except for Monday, July 5th, no meeting because it's an observed holiday. So we'll have uh, a meeting every Monday until August 19th, until August 9th, except for July 5th. And I've already set up the WebEx meetings. Um, I've added pretty much all of you to the invitation list. And I think I need to add one student who just added today. And I'll try to do that later this week. Okay, so meetings are set up. It's that same web link to all the meetings. And just it should be in your calendar. Or it should make a note that just every Monday at 6 o'clock. All right, we'll join the same time. Okay, so that is the syllabus. Any questions on what I went through on the syllabus, or kind of just general questions?
Excuse me, Professor?
Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering if sometimes we late about 2 or 3 minutes to attend the meeting. Is that okay?
So if I'm sorry, can you ask that again?
I mean, if sometimes we are late to
Oh,
attend the meeting, is that okay for 2 or 3 minutes?
yeah, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, just I mean, I'm sure you have I'm sure you have other obligations and schedules and work things and et cetera.
Yeah.
And so yeah, try to come.
Mm-hmm.
If you're late, that's fine. Just I want you if you I want you to come as soon as you or even if you come late, I want you to come. And so yeah, don't worry about that. But try to come. If you're late, no big deal. If you miss something, like I said, all the material is going to be recorded, and you can see it on my YouTube page, which I'll show you. But yeah, if you're late a few minutes, no big deal.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, and it did I did notice that one of the students that joined a few minutes late, I had to add them. And so just if I'm not paying attention and you're trying to and you see someone like on the queue trying to add let me know, or like if someone else sees it, because just in case I'm not paying attention. But I didn't see it until I had looked over to the right where it said like some student is in the it's like Zoom where you have to allow them in, I guess. But usually that's not a problem. Yeah. So okay. So anything else? Any more general questions on the syllabus? Anything there? All right. So there's that. Okay. And I want to go through the rest of the Blackboard page I've got it set up, and then we'll get into today's material. And all right. And so here's the Blackboard page. If you click on discussions, okay, so this is where I want you to post your homework assignments, and I've already got the form set up. And so these, I guess there's nine assignments, nine homework assignments, if you see them here. And so the ones that are due next week are the first one, the first group. And so basically, like when you turn in your homework assignment, you're just going to go to the forum for the appropriate assignment, and then click on Create Thread, and just post your. You're going to post your completed assignment, and if you can do it as a Word document or a PDF, that's the preferred method. But if just if you can do that, that's great. If not, do what you can. But yeah, this is where you're going to turn in all your homework assignments. Okay, so you'll post your first one here. You'll post your next one here, and so on. So each time you complete the assignment and want to turn it in, just go to the right forum, post your file, and then it's turned in. Okay. So, and I'll make a note of that as we go along. But here's where you're going to turn in all your assignments. The uh, take-home exams, the midterm and the final, those will be due via email, and I'll remind you of that. But homework assignments are due here in the discussions, and the exams are due via email. Okay. Um, okay. If you go down, so there's the syllabus that we went through, and there's the links for the other information if you need that. Okay, and I also so I made a little section for each of um, the topics that I want to go through, and so here's chapters 1 through 2. All right, so each thing has a little there's some like supplementary documents and then also a homework assignment. Okay, and so there's the chapter 1 and chapter 2 stuff. Okay, here's the chapter 3 stuff, and the chapter 3 stuff has an additional homework assignment that we'll get to, but each materials so there's like practice problems and resources and homework questions that go with each topic or chapter. So those are there, chapters 1 through 2, which we'll do today. Okay, and then all the stuff is already here. So if you want to go ahead and look at stuff, you can. So basically, I want to cover chapters 1 to 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, and then I have some other um, kind of data analysis research assignments we'll do as well, which are the elasticity homework, which we'll talk about next week, and the oligopoly homework, which we'll talk about in a while. Okay, so all the chapter materials and homeworks are here. The homework assignments, when you do them, will be posted here. I have some PowerPoints for each chapter. All right, and we'll try to do chapters 1 and 2 today. I'm not sure why they're out of order, but here they all are. Okay, here's all the PowerPoints for the chapters. I did post an older edition, what I found of the textbook here, because I just needed it to show you some of the graphs and stuff like that. So I'll leave that there as a reference. Okay, and then what else is here? So we'll get to this later, but the I have some resources for the midterm, and I have the midterm here, and I have the same stuff for the final. So pretty much, assuming there's no changes or additional material, most of the material, if not all, is already posted on Blackboard, so you can look at that. You can look at what the exams are going to look like and etc. But most of the material is I've already prepared it. It's already up here. Okay, and then here, the last thing, if you click on the YouTube link, oh, I have another person that needs to be added. Admit. Okay. Okay, so sorry, when you're on the Blackboard page, and if you click on the YouTube link here, it will take you here. And when you get to my YouTube page, it's just a compilation of WebEx meetings from Laverne. And if you click on playlists, and this class is BUS525, obviously, and then the all the meetings will be organized here. And so I'll post today's meeting, and you'll see the date and so on. So you can view all the meetings here after the fact, and today's meeting, when we're done with it, will be posted later tonight or tomorrow morning. Okay. Um, question is, okay, no problem. Okay, so that is kind of a summary of the Blackboard page and all the material you need, and then the link to the YouTube page, which is going to have the videos after the fact. Um, any questions on logistics or kind of how I've organized the Blackboard page or anything like that? All right. Okay, so maybe we'll start doing the material for today. So click on. All right, so what I want to do today is chapter 1, which is kind of an intro chapter, and then chapter 2, which is going to review supply and demand. All right, and so that's on the agenda for today. So let's go ahead and start doing that. Okay, so let's see. If you go to the chapters 1 through 2 section on Blackboard, you can open up this thing, the chapter 1 Word document. What? I'm not. Okay. Can I think they changed a few things. So is that viewable? Okay. Can you see the Word document? No. Okay. Let me see what. Hold on one second. Okay. Great. Okay. So there's been a few updates. It looks like to the WebEx software. So I might have to, you know. Okay. So we got that. Let's see. Why is it? Okay. We got that. All right. Maybe I should just share. So it looks like every time I share something, it locks on that, and now I have to, because before I could go back and forth, but it's not. I'm just going to share my screen. Let me try this. Okay, so I've shared my screen. So if you can't see something, let me know. But okay, so I opened up the Word document, and then if you can see the Blackboard page, I also want to open up. If you go to PowerPoint, and you can open up. First, I'm going to open up just the older version of the textbook. All right, and then I'm going to open up the Chapter 1 PowerPoint. Okay, so I've shared my screen, so I'm gonna kind of go back and forth between the PowerPoint for Chapter 1, the supplementary Word document for Chapter 1, and then the older textbook. And so if you can't see something or you want me to make it bigger or show it again, let me know. But let's just start with the PowerPoint. And so my PowerPoints are pretty basic. It just kind of gives the general idea of what I want to talk about and the kind of practice problems I want to show or the general concepts. Okay, so let's start with the Chapter 1 PowerPoint. Okay, so everyone can see the PowerPoint, right? Okay, perfect. All right, so yeah, I think sharing the screen is the way to go. All right, so we're not going to watch this video, but there's an intro to economics video here that you can take a look at if you want. And so let's just get into kind of a couple of definitions and basics, and we'll start looking at some practice problems and some more in-depth content. All right, so just managerial economics defined. This is just basic stuff from the intro chapter 1. It's just the study of how to direct scarce resources in the way that most efficiently achieves some managerial goal. So you're using economic concepts and mostly microeconomic concepts to achieve some business or managerial goal. And so this is going to be very much a microeconomics class and won't focus much on macro. So we'll kind of go through intro stuff, kind of supply and demand and consumer behavior, and then we'll spend a whole good portion of the class on firm behavior, different types of firms, different types of markets, and stuff like that. Okay, so these are some 6 things for the economics of an effective management. And so an effective manager is going to want to try to do these things if possible. So you want to know your goals and constraints. So you want to know if you're trying to maximize something, minimize something, and what your constraints are. Do you have a labor constraint? Do you have a resource constraint? Stuff like that. Um, you want to recognize the nature and importance of profits. So a lot of firms are in the business of trying to maximize the revenue or minimize costs, which is the same thing as maximizing profits. And so we're going to look at some profit maximizing behavior of different types of firms in different types of markets. Okay, you want to understand incentives, in particular for your consumers and your employees. You're going to want to understand what type of market you're in and how you should behave when you're in that market, if you enter it or are thinking of entering a specific type of market. One thing we're going to talk about in a few minutes is the time value of money. And so we'll kind of review some present value, net present value analysis, which is very important here. And then always in economics is we're going to look at things on the margin. And so marginal analysis is very important because what happens on the margin depends on where you are in the specific type of firm. So when you make a change now versus when you make a change, in a month or so, it might be different. So we want to look at changes on the margin. And so we'll do a bunch of that as well. Okay, so economic versus accounting profits. This is a review that I talked about quite a bit in BUS525 if you took that or took any intro to economics course. So just to highlight the difference between economic profits and accounting profits. And so really economic profits are accounting for the opportunity cost. So the difference between total revenue and the total opportunity cost of producing the firm's good or service is the economic profit. So it's not just like accounting revenue minus cost. It's also what you could have done with those resources instead of doing what you did. So you always want to look at the opportunity cost of using a resource, which is the implicit cost of the next best alternative. So even if you use some inputs into a business, there's always a cost to be considered for what you could have done with it. So you can always, if you're running a business and things get costly, you can always sell your capital if the opportunity cost of selling it is higher than running the business. So there's always a cost to every decision made. And so the economic profits looks at not only the accounting profits, but also what you could have done with those resources. So it's kind of controlling for the opportunity cost. Okay, so a few more introductory things. So this is a nice little slide from the textbook, these 5 categories or forces that would, in theory, impact the sustainability of industry profits. And so 5 things here are entry. So depending on what type of market you're in, and we'll talk about all the different types of markets in chapter 7 or 8 or something like that. But depending on what type of market you're entering or trying to enter, the difficulty of entry depends on the type of market. Okay, the power of input suppliers. So we're seeing this. This is very relevant right now because a lot of firms are having to raise costs because the cost of their inputs has gone way up. So like uh, the cost of housing is up is really up because the inputs like the wood and the input materials are the cost of those has gone up, like the steel and the wood. Um, a lot of the inputs of automobiles have gone up, so that's caused the cost of the final product, the automobile, to rise as well. And so if there's a lot of control, if you don't have a lot of control over your inputs, that's going to affect your bottom line. The power of buyers. Okay, so if you make any change with your price or your product, you want to know how your buyers are going to react. Okay, are there rivals in your industry that you have to consider? So if you're in a type of market that has big competing firms, what you do is going to have a big impact on what your rival does. And we'll talk about some game theory aspects later, which is going to bring into this concept. Okay, and then we're going to talk about today substitutes and complements when we look at supply and demand, where depending on the type of good, there might be substitutes that consumers can choose between, and your good might be a complementary good that consumers consume with like a bundle, like you know, ketchup and mustard or peanut butter and jelly, stuff like that. Okay, so kind of the first concept and a couple examples I want to look at is kind of a review or presentation of present value analysis. So the present value, if you've taken any finance or accounting, if you haven't, we'll cover all the basics here. But this is a very important concept that I like to look at pretty quickly in the course, just to review present value. And so the present value of something or a project or a business is the the present value of an amount received in the future is the amount that would have to be invested today at the prevailing interest rate to get the future value. So it's if you're going to get something in the future or you're discounting it, how much is it worth today? And you're going to look at that by discounting it or looking at interest rates. And so the simple formula here for present value, so the present value of a future value kind of looks like this. And so the present value is the future value divided by 1 plus the interest rate, and n is the number of periods or number of years where you have to wait to get that thing. So it's very easy to see this. It's a little blurry there, but hopefully you can see it, where PV equals FV divided by 1 plus I to the n. Um, and so the idea here is that if you kind of multiply it across, your future value would be the present value times 1 plus the interest rate, and then uh, compounded or raised to whatever number of years or periods it gets that interest. And therefore, that's if you go backwards, your present value is the future value divided by that discount term. So the present value is going to be a little bit less than your future value because you have to wait to get it. So depending on what the interest rate is, it's going to have a big impact on your present value and what your future value is in present terms. Okay, so you can see that the higher the interest rate, the lower the present value, because the idea really is that if you're trying to compute the present value of something and the interest rate goes up, then on the margin, if the interest rate goes high enough, then you can just put the money for that project or that business into some account that earns interest instead of doing the business. And so the higher the return in some um, other interest-bearing account, the lower the present value because you could have put that money into the interest-bearing account. So the interest rate has a direct impact on what the present value of that item is. Okay, and so we're going to look at now a present value of a stream. And so if there's if you have a payment in year one, a payment in year two, and so on. If you have a number of payments that go in different years, which is likely in a business or like a bond payment, stuff like that, you can look at it as the sum of all the future values discounted. All right. And the longer you have to wait, the longer they get discounted. So the longer you wait for something, the less it's worth today because you have to wait for it and you could have done something else with that money and put it into some interest bearing account. Okay. So the net present value. All right. So we had present value, the present value of a stream of payments, and now the net present value is just the present value of the stream of payments minus the initial investment cost. So the net present value, if you're familiar with this, of a project or a business is just the present value of the income stream and just subtract the cost. So here you see this is the discounted future value in period one or year one. If you can see this one, this is the discounted future value in year two, and so on. So you add up all your discounted future values, the stream of those, and you subtract your initial costs, like your initial development or investment costs, C subscript 0 here. And so if you add up all the payments or the future values and subtract the cost, that's your net present value. So like if the stream of values are bigger than the initial cost, then you'd have a positive net present value. And if your cost is higher than the investment, then it's probably not worth doing because it's more costly than the future values are going to receive. Okay. Okay. So I think so. Next thing we'll do is let's do a little example just to make sure we're familiar. We've got this concept down of net present value using the basic formula, um, which is basically just as the net present value is to sum up all the payments, discount them, and subtract the initial costs based on whatever situation you're in. So let's look here at slide 10, and I want to go through demonstration problem 1.1.1 in your textbook, and I've prepared it on the Word document. Okay, so on Blackboard on chapters 1 through 2, the chapter 1 document has the problems I've gone through. And so if you open up this one, which I think I already opened, the chapter 1, we got this here. Okay. So let's go through demonstration problem 1.1, and there's a homework question similar to this, so make sure you got this concept here. But can everyone see this okay? Make it a little bigger. Question? Yeah, so the red is my solving, yeah, the red is me solving it, or the solutions basically. Yeah. Okay, so let's go through the problem and then I'll show you how I solved it. Okay. So demonstration problem 1.1. So this is the question here. And so the manager of automated products is contemplating the purchase of a new machine that will cost $300,000 and has a useful life of 5 years. The machine will yield year-end cost reductions to automated products of 50,000 in year 1, 60,000 in year 2, 75,000 in year 3, and 90,000 in years 4 and 5. So it's for 5 years, we have to consider the 5 years of payments. So what is the present value of the cost saving of the machine if the interest rate is 8%, and should the manager purchase the machine? So basically we're going to calculate the net present value for this stream of cost reductions, given that the initial cost is 300,000 and the interest rate is 8%. Okay? So you can take the general formula here, if you can see that, just the sum of the payments minus the costs, and apply that to this problem. So if you look here, the net present value is, so we'll go through the terms, but this is what you get in the first year, 50,000 in year one. Okay, so 50,000 in year one divided by 1 plus the interest rate is 1.08. So 1 plus 8% interest rate in decimal terms is 1.08. So it's 1 plus 0.08 is 1.08. And then in the first year, it's just raised to the 1. Okay, so this is for year one. Okay, then the second year, you do the same thing. You get 60,000 in year two. Okay, you divide that by 1 plus the interest rate, but in this case, it's raised to the 2 because you have to wait 2 periods. So it's 1.08, it's divided by 1.08 squared. Okay, so this is year one payment or cost reduction. This is year two cost reduction, and here's year three. So year three, you get 75,000, and that gets divided by 1.08 to the third, because that's the third year, and you got to wait 3 years. Okay, and then in years 4 and 5, you get 90,000 each year. Okay, so here's year 4, 90,000 divided by 1.08 to the 4, and then here's year 5, 90,000 divided by 1.08 to the 5. So this is your stream of, in this case, they're cost reductions, but they're like payments. So year 1 discounted plus year 2 plus year 3 plus year 4 plus year 5. So if you sum up all these terms, okay, that's your payment. So after year 5, the machine it's done. Okay, and then you subtract the initial cost of 300,000 right there. So here's all the cost reductions or the stream of payments, and here's the initial cost. You don't have to discount the initial cost because you have to pay it right away. So the question is this return worth the 300,000 you have to pay for the project? So if you did the math here, you should get something like negative 15,321. And so that would tell you that paying this, it's not worth the return you get because you don't cover the initial 300,000. So if your net present value is negative, in this case, negative 15,321, you're not going to want to purchase the machine because your net present value of the calculation is less than 0. Okay. So what you want to do in this type of problem is just look at the little word problem, set up your future values, discount those, and then subtract your initial capital cost. Okay, just using the basic net present value formula. Okay, so questions on this type of problem or what I did here? All right, so everyone's good on this concept? Okay, so let's go back to the are you always going to so the round, like the decimals, it's whatever you want to do. It's especially with big numbers, like I don't really care if you use decimals or round. You're still going to get I'm still going to give you all the full points. So whatever you want to, so you can round to whole numbers. You can include decimals. As long as you're you got the right answer, it doesn't make a difference. So you can round to whole numbers, especially with big numbers like thousands and millions, or you can keep the decimals. Either way, if you get it right, you get it right. So it's up to you. Okay, so let's go back to the PowerPoint here. Okay, so next thing I want to talk a little bit about marginal analysis and net benefits and marginal net benefits. So I wanted to show you one figure from the older textbook, which is figure 1-2. Okay, so I'll try to make that. All right, can everyone see this graph here? Okay. Oh, it's a little bit. Okay, so what we're doing here is just this is kind of a simple model of like a cost benefit analysis project, and so we're looking at here um, how much of a project or how much output to do in just a simple model to maximize our net benefits. And so this first graph, right? This is total benefits and costs on the y-axis, and this is just output or how much you produce or how much you choose to do of the activity, Q. Okay, and so the y-axes are like monetary, these are dollar things, and Q is output or how much you produce. Okay, and so this little function is these are your benefits, BQ. So benefits is a function of Q, and the other one, these are your costs, as a function of Q. So uh, the idea here is for like a cost benefit analysis project, just in general, you want to try to choose the point in which the gap between benefits and costs is the highest. So like you're maximizing your distance, like you see how this little graph kind of it gets bigger than it kind of closes in. And so the best you can do here is the biggest distance between benefits and costs in which you have the highest gap so your benefits exceed your cost by the most. So that's the best you can do. If you go beyond this, you're going to get less benefit and higher costs. If you go below this, you could have gotten better with producing more to get more benefits. Okay, and so if you look at this second graph, these are net benefits. And so the idea is that your net benefits are maximized when this distance between costs and benefits is the biggest. So when this like plateaus or gets to the highest point, right? So if you're this is like we're increasing Q. So if this is 0, all right, and so if you start producing more, you're getting more net benefits and you're getting more net benefits, and then right here you get a maximum. If you produce more output beyond this point, you're just going to lose benefit. You're going to lose net benefits. So this is just a simple example, but this shows the concept to get the biggest distance between benefits and cost is the point when your maximum net benefits are hit the apex here. Okay, and that's also you can see the third. So you can see the third graph here, marginal benefits and costs. And so you can kind of see the link where this distance is the biggest when net benefits are at their high point and when marginal net benefits are 0, which is also the point when marginal benefits equals marginal cost. Okay, so in a graphical or a theory aspect, it ties everything together, where you basically want to the whole the story here is that you want to try to produce the point in which marginal benefits equals marginal cost. That's the best you can do. Okay, sometimes it's difficult to determine what that point is in a business or a project, but your goal is to produce here where benefits equals costs on the margin. Okay, so you don't have to memorize these graphs, or this is just a nice little graphical illustration of uh, trying to get to the point when marginal cost equals marginal benefit, which is kind of what you're trying to do in any kind of cost benefit analysis scenario. Okay, so now I want to look at a couple examples of that the marginal analysis cost benefit stuff. And I've solved these in the Word document as well, so let's go through those. So back to the Word document. Okay, so here's the Word document. So the last thing we'll do for chapter 1 is go through a couple examples of net benefits and those ones here. So yeah. All right, everyone doing okay so far? Okay, perfect. Okay, so I've got a couple of questions here. And so for the chapter 1 homework that we'll get to in a little bit, you're going to have one question on the net present value type of question, and then one on these net benefits. Okay, so let's go through a couple of these, and then you can let me know if you have any questions. You can use these as a reference to do your assignment. Okay, so number 3, let's suppose that the total benefit and total cost from an activity are given by these equations. So you have a benefits equation, which is this. You have a cost equation, which is that. And you have a marginal benefits equation and a marginal cost equation. Okay? So let's use these equations or identities where benefits and costs are a function of output to answer the questions. Okay, so part A. Write out the equation for net benefits. So net benefits are always benefits minus costs. So this is the general equation. Net benefits as a function of Q are benefits minus cost. Okay, so let's put that. So benefits, I guess so basically it's this minus this, right? So if you do a little algebra here, 150 minus 100 is 50, okay? And then 28 minus 8 is 20, and then you have the minus 5q squared. So basically, I'm saying this minus that is this, okay? So our net benefits are 50 plus 2q minus 5q squared. All right, so just a little algebra there. Okay, part B, what are the net benefits when q equals 1 and q equals 5? Okay, so just now you have the net benefits equation here, and you just want to plug in the value of 1 and 5 for q. Okay, so when q is 1, you get 50 plus 20 times 1 minus 5 times 1 squared. So that's 50 plus 20 minus 5, which is 65. All right, and then when q is 5, net benefits are 50 plus 20 times 5 minus 5 times 5 squared, which is 50 plus 100 minus 5 times 25, which is 125. So that leaves you with 25. So what you can see is that um, so you got to produce something. So Q's got to be at least 1. So it looks like your net benefits are maximized somewhere between 1 and 5. So looks like um, 5 is too much, but we have to find the point in which net benefits, we have to find the Q in which, in between 1 and 5, in which net benefits are maximized. So part C, write out the equation for marginal net benefits. So marginal net benefits are just marginal benefits minus marginal cost as a function of Q. So it's just the, right? So marginal net benefits, marginal benefit minus marginal cost. All right, so all we're doing here is taking this minus that. All right, so basically 28 minus 10 minus 8 is 20 minus 10q. All right, so marginal benefits minus marginal cost. Okay, then what are the marginal net benefits when Q equals 1 and Q equals 5. So plug in 1 for your marginal net benefits function that you solve for, where we get 20 minus 10 times 1, which is 10. And if you plug in 5, you get 20 minus 10 times 5, which is negative 30. So you can clearly see that the best choice of Q is definitely not 5. Okay, and we can find that Q with a simple identity, and there's two ways we can solve it, and this will be familiar with the graph we looked at. So the level of Q, part E, what's the level of Q that maximizes net benefits? So there's two conditions that gotta hold here. So marginal net benefits have to equal 0, and marginal benefits have to equal marginal costs. So if you recall from the graph here, okay, so we can prove this point, and that'll confirm that we have the right Q. Okay, so let's do that. So we have marginal net benefits right there. Let's set that equal to 0 and find the Q, which satisfies that condition. So marginal net benefits, or 20 minus 10Q. Okay, when that's equal to 0, that's the Q that maximizes net benefits. All right, so 20 minus 10Q equals 0. Let's solve for Q, and that means that add 10Q to both sides, and we get 10Q minus 10Q equals 20, and then divide by 10, and we get Q equals 2. Q star is 2. Okay, so Q star is just the Q that maximizes. That's the best Q. Okay, and you can confirm that's the right one when is that also when marginal benefits equals marginal cost. So marginal benefits are 28 minus 10Q. Okay, that's given. And marginal costs are 8. So when those are equal, what's the Q that does that? Just add 10Q to both sides and subtract 8 from both sides, and you get 10Q equals 20. And divide by 10, and yeah, so Q is 2, Q is 2, so it must be that when your benefits are maximized, when you produce an output of 2. Okay, so at the value of Q, the part F, at the value of Q that maximizes net benefits, what is the value of marginal net benefits? So you know that's going to be 0 because that's the condition, but just confirm it. Marginal net benefits when Q equals 2 is 20 minus 10 times 2, which is 20 minus 20, which is 0. Okay, so one more example here. Number 9 from the textbook from chapter 1. Let's suppose the total benefit and total cost derived from a given decision Q are, that's the benefit, that's the cost, that's the marginal benefit, and that's the marginal cost. Okay, so part A. What is total benefit when Q equals 2 and Q equals 10? All right, just take this and plug in the said values of 2 and 10. So when Q is 2, you get 25 times 2 minus 2 squared, which is 50 minus 4, which is 46. And when Q is 10, you get 25 minus 10, sorry, 25 times 10 minus 10 squared, which is 250 minus 100, which is 150. All right, so your benefit's increasing there as a function of Q. What part B, what is marginal benefit when Q is 2 and 10? Okay, so just take this equation and plug in 2 and 10 into Q. Okay, you get 25 minus 2 times 2, which is 25 minus 4, 21. And when it's 10, you get 25 minus 2 times 10, which is 25 minus 20. All right, and that's 5. Okay. Now, part C, what level of Q maximizes total benefit? So if you recall from the equation, um, your benefits are going to be maximized when net benefits are zero. Okay, so see how the high point there is when net benefits are zero. So we can find that point, and that'll tell us where the benefits are maximized. Sorry, when marginal benefits are zero, that's when our benefits are maximized. So if you look at the graph, marginal benefits. Okay. Oh, so marginal benefits are down here. So marginal benefits, when that's zero, that's when this reaches its high point. So we're saying that this function reaches its highest point when marginal benefits are zero. So if you set this equal to zero, that tells you what the highest what the Q is that gives you the highest benefit. Okay. So when marginal benefits equals zero, what's the Q that does that? Um, Marginal benefits are 25 minus 2Q. Set that equal to zero. Okay, and solve for Q. So just put 2Q on one side. All right, we get 2Q equals 25, and then just divide by 2, and we get the Q that maximizes total benefit is 12.5. All right, so a few more here, and then we're done with this one. What is total cost when Q is 2 and Q is 10? So just plug in those values into the cost function here. So when Q is 2, we get 5 plus 2 squared, which is 5 plus 4 is 9. And when Q is 10, we get 5 plus 10 squared, which is 100 plus 5, it's 105. Okay, then what is marginal cost when Q is 2 and Q is 10? So just plug in those values into the marginal cost function. All right, and the marginal cost function is just 2Q. So when just multiply those things by 2. So 2 times 2 is 4, and 2 times 10 is 20. Okay, and what level of Q minimizes total cost? So you know that the minimum cost is always going to be when you're not producing, because anytime you're producing, your cost goes up. So the lowest cost is always Q is 0. So you can confirm that when marginal cost is 0. Okay, but you're gonna get the point when Q is 0, because your cost is always at its lowest when you haven't produced anything. So anytime you start producing, your cost goes up. Okay, so when marginal cost is 0, that's when 2Q right there equals 0. So obviously 2 times Q is 0, then divide by 2, and that's just when Q is 0. Okay, finally, what level of Q maximizes net benefits? So again, the conditions should be that the marginal benefit equals the marginal cost, and also the marginal net benefit is 0. Okay, so let's first set marginal benefits equal to marginal cost. Set that equal to that. We get 25 minus 2Q equals 2Q. And let's solve for Q. Add 2Q to both sides, we get 4Q equals 25. And if we divide by 4, we get the optimal Q star is 6.25. All right, and let's also confirm that's when marginal net benefits equals 0. So marginal net benefits are, do we get that? Or I guess we have to solve for that. So it would be 25 minus 2Q minus 4Q. I mean, 25 minus 2Q minus 2Q. So marginal net benefits are 25 minus 4q. Okay, and when that is 0, that should be when q is maximized. So set this equal to 0 and solve for q and put 4q on both sides. We get 4q equals 25 and divide that by 25 by 4 and we get 6.25. So we confirmed that 6.25 is the best Q to maximize net benefits, and that's always when marginal benefit equals marginal cost and marginal net benefit is 0. So again, that confirms the identity on the graph. Okay, so we solved for this point, this biggest distance, which is that point, which is solving for it's when marginal benefit equals marginal cost right there, and when marginal net benefit equals 0. So we found the Q that maximizes these conditions for this particular problem.
Professor,
Yes.
could you let me look again the last
This one?
question?
Yeah.
I do not understand why MBQ equal MCQ. According to this formula, why we can get the maximized net benefits.
Oh, so this one, this here?
Yeah, this one and the MNBQ equals 0, why we can get the Q maximized net benefits. Could you explain?
Oh,
Let me-
so yeah, so why these conditions give us the Q that gives us the highest?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so okay, so let's look here at the yeah, so good question. So let's look here at the graph. And so this is the story graph. So depending on the Q and the function, if you look at these three graphs for just a simple, cost benefit project where we're essentially trying to find the point when marginal cost equals marginal benefit because that is the point when your benefits and costs have the biggest distance. So see how the best we can do is when the benefits exceed costs by the biggest distance, which is that right there. So that's the point, that's the Q when net benefits are maximized. And if we're solving for that, that coincides with the point in which marginal benefit, here's marginal benefit, equals marginal cost right there. So we're solving for this point and also this point because that's the point in which this is the highest and this distance is the biggest. So we're trying to find this, and to do that, the identity to confirm it is when, see, this is benefits, this line going down, and this is cost. So when marginal benefits equals marginal cost, that's the maximum point. So we're trying to find this point and this point by doing this and by doing this.
Oh, I see.
Yeah?
Yeah. I know equal the maximum net benefits.
Yeah, exactly. So we want to find this Q that gives us the highest net benefits. And to do that, we have to set marginal benefits equal to marginal costs and also double check that that's when marginal net benefits equal 0. So see how we're solving for that by setting these two graphs equal, or these two equations equal. And we're solving for this point by just setting this equal to 0. So we basically said this point is when that function equals that function, and that's also the point when that equals 0.
Oh, I see.
Yeah?
I got it. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so any more questions or any additional questions on this one or the previous one, the benefits and costs? All right. Okay. Okay, so we're done with chapter 1. Okay, so Under chapters 1 through 2, you can actually let's do all right. So we'll so okay. So we got to do chapter 2 still. So let's do chapter 2, and then we'll look at the homework for chapters 1 through 2, which is due next Monday. Okay. So chapter 1 is done, and chapter 2 is a nice little review of supply and demand. All right. So I'll try to get this done today. So let's open up the chapter 2 document. All right, and then let's open up the PowerPoint for chapter 2. And if you go to PowerPoint, and you can open up uh, the chapter 2 PowerPoint there. Okay. All right, so let's chapter 2 is a nice little review of supply and demand, which we're going to need for which you've probably I'm sure you've studied supply and demand in basic economics or intro to economics, etc. But let's kind of cover the basics because we'll need a lot of this as the chapters start building. So, okay, so demand, so market demand curve is just a curve indicating the total quantity of a good all consumers are willing and able to purchase at possible prices, and that's basically holding everything else constant. So at different prices, what will the market pay for a good or service? Okay, so a typical demand curve looks like this, where you have your price on the y-axis and your quantity here, and basically, the law of demand is when the price goes down, uh, the quantity demanded goes up, and when the price goes up, the quantity demanded goes down. So this is a nice little depiction of a demand curve and showing the law of demand. All right, so there's your demand curve or a typical demand curve. Okay, so just want to specify things, the distinction between changes in quantity demanded and changes in demand. So changes in quantity demanded, this is basically going up or down the demand curve. So when just the price of the good changes, that moves you to a different point on the demand curve. And so that's a change in quantity demanded. Now, a change in demand or a shift in demand is when some other variable besides the goods price changes. That's going to cause the demand curve to shift because the relationship at each price has changed. So we're going to look at some things that can shift the demand curve, but just make the distinction between going like, all right, so if the price of the good changes, you just go like if the price goes from 30 to 35, you go along the demand curve. Or if the price goes from 30 to 25, you go down the demand curve. So this is just uh, if the price of the good changes, you just go along the demand curve. But if the if the demand for the good or service goes up or down, you're going to have a demand shift, and the shift of the curve is going to go this way and this way depending on the effect. Okay, let's talk about a couple demand shifters. What can shift or cause the relationship to change? Um, and so there's a couple nice examples I like to look at. So the first one is with income. And so income distinguishes between normal goods and inferior goods. Um, so a normal good is essentially when, like, if you're looking at the relationship between quantity demanded and income, if income goes up and the demand for that good or service goes up, that's a normal good. So this is typical when you have a market for a good and the consumers get more income, they get a stimulus check or something, then they're going to buy more of it. Now, the other kind of weird type of good is called an inferior good, and this is when essentially when you have a market for a good or service and those consumers get more income, they buy less of it, or when like if they if they get a stimulus check or some tax return, they buy less, or if their income goes down, like they get laid off, or they have less income, they buy more of it. So there's an inverse relationship here between income and quantity demanded. And so most goods are in this category, or this is the typical thing you think of, but it's also important to illustrate some examples here. So maybe we can think of an example here. So let me post a question to the chat here. Okay, so can someone think of an example or examples of an inferior good, which means essentially that with higher levels of income, less of it's bought, and when your income goes down, you buy more of it. So it's a there's an inverse relationship between income and demand for this good or service. So can you think of some examples in which this might what kind of goods or services might this what might be an inferior good? Okay, so any ideas? Okay, we'll try to think of something that like all right, I'll put some examples. Yeah, so it's going to be some grocery products. So yeah, so think of like food is a good one because you can think of foods at which you still have to buy food, but the quality of food you buy probably goes up when you get more income, and vice versa. So like you can make a meal on fast food, canned vegetables, or instant soup, or something like that, or like uh, spam. I don't know. Okay, so things in which when your income goes up, you're probably gonna buy less of them because you'd prefer like a restaurant meal or like some better quality meals. And so that's kind of the idea here for inferior goods. So when consumers have less income, they buy more of it, and when they have more income, they buy less of it. Okay? And basically, yeah, if you look at this little picture where you have a change in demand, so an increase in demand would be shifting the curve this way. So this is an increase or a shift to the right, this rightward arrow. And if it goes left, this is a decrease. So this is an increase, and this is a decrease, meaning that if you hold the price of the good constant, if there's an increase in demand, the market will buy more of it at that same price. And if there's a decrease in demand, the market on average will buy less of it. So this is an increase this way, and that's a decrease. Okay, so a couple more types of demand shifters. So this subcategory is the price of related goods, and there's two types: substitutes and complements. So substitutes are basically if you think of two goods or two services in which the consumer can kind of pick and choose, and they can like one good can be a supplement for the other if the price of the other good goes up or down. So maybe we can think of examples here for these ones. So let's see if we can think of two goods in which the consumer might substitute between the two depending on the price. So what are two goods? So what are two goods that might be substitute goods? So like you need a good X and a good Y in which the consumer, might have some preference but would choose the cheaper good because they're substitutes. So like what are two goods that might be substitutes? Can we think of examples of these ones? Yeah, yeah, Coca-Cola, right. So Coca-Cola and like a different kind of soda beverage, exactly. So like if the consumer just wants uh, a cola, okay, and they're choosing between the two, then if the price, I mean, probably the name brand Coke would have a little bit higher price, but if the price of Coke goes up too much and the price of the other substitute doesn't, they're going to probably buy the other one. Yeah, so exactly. So those are two goods which are the same category, but they can be substituted because they're essentially the same type of good. Right, exactly. Okay, and so if you look at the graph, the idea here is that so if this figure two is the demand curve for Coca-Cola, all right, and let's say the price of like Pepsi goes down. If the price of Pepsi goes down, some consumers on the margin might buy more Pepsi because now it's relatively cheaper. And so if this is good X Coke and good Y is Pepsi and the price of Pepsi goes down, then we probably see is a decrease in demand for Coke because some consumers on the margin are buying the cheaper Pepsi, right? Okay, what about complements? So can we now think of two goods in which it doesn't have to be the case, but in many circumstances, the consumers buy these two goods together, right? And so they're complementary. So what are two goods that might be complements? So this is the next question. Okay, so now we think of two goods in which it's typical for them to be consumed together. All right, so what's good X and good Y? So what are two goods or services in which you might see consumers kind of consume together? So two complements. Okay, any ideas for these ones? All right, so what might be two complement? Yeah, that's exactly what. Yeah, so you can't have those things go together. Uh, Definitely. So gasoline and cars are complements because you're probably well aware that, I mean, even though the car is way more expensive than a gallon of gas, they're interlinked. So when the price, I mean, well, it applies, but I don't know that it has a like a one. So like I'm not so sure that if the price of gas goes up, people buy less cars. You know what I mean? But maybe we can say like just to do the trade-off thing. Yeah, milk and cookies would also right. So that Yeah, so that's a good one too. So the gas, so gas and cars are definitely complements, but it would be hard to look at uh, the demand for cars versus the demand for gasoline because the price difference is so big. But maybe like driving. So if you looked at like if good X was just like miles driven and good Y was gasoline, then that would definitely be right. That would kind of tell the story a little better. And yeah, milk and cookies. So let's go back to the graph. Oops. Okay, so if this is the typical graph, and let's say this is the demand curve now for um, driving, like miles driven in your car. So if miles driven are is a function of so the demand for miles driven is a function of gasoline. If the price of gasoline goes up, you'd probably see a decrease in demand for driving miles because it's now more expensive. Okay, and you can also look at this as the milk and cookies example. Let's say this is uh, now the demand curve for milk, or let's say it's the demand curve for cookies. So if milk and cookies are consumed together, they're complements. Then if the price of the related good, milk, goes down, you might see increase in demand for cookies. Okay, so you can see kind of the link here between the related goods, where if you're consuming them together, um, if the price of the other good goes up, you're going to buy less of the complement. If the price of the other good goes down, you're going to buy more of the complement because the bundle or the consumption together depends on what happens to the other good. Okay, right. Okay, so I think that we got the idea there between normal goods, inferior goods, and complements and substitutes. Yeah. Okay, so those are the main ones, but there's many other things that can shift the demand curve. You can have advertising can shift the demand curve if that conveys information. If consumer taste change, then that can affect demand. If there's more people or just a bigger population or a bigger market, that can affect demand. And depending on what consumers expect the market to do in the future, that can shift the demand curve as well. Okay, so anything that affects demand that isn't price is going to cause it to shift if it changes. Okay, so so the demand function, and we'll get to more of this in chapter 3 when we look at elasticity, but a demand function is just a function of quantity demanded that's built up of all the things that affect demand. And a linear demand function would be that quantity demanded is a function of all those things that affect it in a linear relationship. So if you look at, okay, so if this, you can see that QDX, that's the quantity demanded of good X, the notation. If that's a function of the price of that good, the price of some related good, M is income, and I think H is everything else. If the quantity demanded of good X is a function of these things, you can represent it like that. And if it was a linear aspect, you can show the linear demand function of the quantity demanded of good X is a function of some intercept in a linear relationship between price and demand plus a linear relationship between the price of some related good and demand, all right, and all the things. So you can model demand as a function of the things that affect it. And if you want to simplify and assume that it's a linear demand function, you can kind of write out all the terms and the individual linear effects, which are those alphas, on demand. Okay, and we'll look at this more when we talk about elasticity in chapter 3. Okay. This one, so skip this. I've got some different questions we'll do at the end. So we're not doing this one. But we do need to briefly talk about consumer surplus. And so this is just the value consumers get from a good, but don't always have to pay for it. So this is best talked about if you look at the graph. Okay, here you go. So here's your demand curve. And based on the price, there's going to be some surplus. So the idea here is that if this is the price of good X, this one, all right, so if you go to the demand curve, here's the point. All right, so if this is the price. Okay, so this pink line is the demand curve. All right, so any any consumer on the demand curve below this price, these ones, see that? They're not buying it because they're only going to pay the price below this. So these consumers aren't going to buy it. But the consumers in the market above this point on this part of the demand curve, so see this upper portion, they'd like these consumers would pay this price, this consumer would pay this price, and there's consumers that would pay up to this price. So all these consumers that would pay higher prices but don't have to because the market is this price, they get a benefit. Okay, and if you sum up all those benefits, this triangle is the surplus that those consumers get because they would pay higher prices, but they don't have to. Okay, so see that this triangle is the consumer surplus, showing that you're breaking the demand curve down based on the market price, this one here. So again, these consumers below, these consumers on the demand curve below the price don't get a benefit. They don't buy because they wouldn't pay that price. They'd only pay lower prices, so they're out of the market. Anything above this price, like this is the max price that anyone would pay for this good. So any price above this, no one's paying. But all these consumers from this point to this point, this along this pink part of the triangle, they get a benefit. And if you sum up the benefits, this triangle here is the consumer surplus or the sum of the benefits they get from buying at this price, but knowing they would pay a higher price. Okay. Okay. So now let's briefly talk about supply. Um, everyone everyone doing okay? We're okay. So supply. So market supply curve shows all the um, quantities that the market would supply of a good or service at different prices. And okay, so here's your supply curve, which shows here's the price of a good or service, and here's the quantity. And you know that uh, a price increase is good for a firm or a seller because that increases the revenue and their chance to compete in the market. So when the price of a good or service goes up, the market supplies more, and when the price of a good or service goes down, the market supplies less. So there's a positive relationship between price and quantity of supply. Okay, and just like we made the distinction between uh, changes in quantity demanded and changes in demand, make the same distinction between quantity supplied and changes in supply. So if there's just a change in the price, that's a change in the quantity supplied, so you're going up or down the supply curve. But if something that affects supply other than price changes, that's going to shift the supply curve. Okay, so next slide 13 is some supply shifters. So any of these things can possibly um, cause supply to shift. So the first one is a big one again now because input prices are causing a lot of firms to decrease supply because it's becoming a lot more costly to supply a lot of things because the intermediate goods or the goods that go into the final product have gone up, and because of that, a lot of firms have to cut back on supply because it's gotten more costly to supply the final good. All right, and then these other things can do it too. Technology, like a advance in technology, can boost supply because it makes it cheaper or more. It makes it cheaper to supply at the same price. Government regulation, depending on a tax or a mandate. If there's more firm supply increases, if there's some kind of substitute in production, that can like if the firm can find a cheaper substitute as an input, they can probably increase supply. Taxes would cut back on supply, and this depends on the expectation. So basically, if you look at the graph here, let's look at two examples. So let's say this is the supply of, I don't know, automobiles, cars. So if there's an increase in inputs, like the glass or the computers, the rubber for tires, or anything that goes into the final product, any input that goes into making an automobile, if those things get more costly, that's going to make it more costly to supply the automobile, and that will cause supply to decrease because getting to the final product is now more costly. So an increase in an input price causes a decrease going this way. Let's say there's a boost in technology for autos. If that's the case, you're going to have an increase because now at the same price and the same factors of production, you can supply more, and there's going to be an increase in supply because now it's easier to supply with the increase in technology. Okay, so anything that causes supply to decrease, you go this way. Anything that causes supply to increase, you go this way to the right. Okay, and just like the demand function and the linear demand function, you can do the same analyses for supply. A supply function is the market supply as a function of all the things that affect it, including price. And a linear supply function is a linear function of all the things that affect supply. So here we go. Okay, so this is the quantity supplied of good X. If that's a function of the price of the good, the price of some resource, uh, what's W? The price of an input, and what's PR? The price of technology, right? So in H is everything else. So if you put all the things that affect supply into the function, that's your supply function, including the price of the good itself. And you can also represent those in a linear aspect by just saying that the effect of each of those things has a linear relationship with the quantity supplied of good X. Okay, like this. Right, this is the linear relationship between price and supply. This is the linear relationship between the price of some resource, the price of technology and supply. This is the linear aspect of input prices, right? So if you can put them in a linear function, all the things that affect supply, you can do it like that. Okay, and again, each of these betas, that's the linear effect of each variable individually on the quantity supplied, basically holding everything else constant. Okay, so general supply function, simplified linear supply function. Okay, skip this. I have some exercises we'll do at the end, and then producer surplus. So this is the amount producers receive in excess of the amount necessary to induce them to produce at the good. So this is the amount, like for producers that would supply at higher or lower prices, this is the benefit they get. So here we go. This shows producer surplus, and this is the market price 400, and this is your supply function going up. So the idea here is that here's point B is the point when on the supply curve at 400, the price of 400. So anybody beyond this point of the supply curve would not supply. They'd only supply at higher prices. Okay, so anyone over here is not supplying. And then anyone below 40 divided by 3, that price, no one can supply at that price. But all these firms that would supply at lower prices but get to supply at this price, they get a benefit in this amount. So all these firms along this area, if you sum up all their benefits because they're able to produce at lower prices than they would, uh, they they'd actually produce at lower prices. Some of them they don't have to. They produce at 400, so they get a benefit, and the sum of that benefit is produce a surplus, or this pink triangle here. Okay, so a few more things. So um, it's almost 8 o'clock, but we can probably wrap this up in a few minutes or 15 minutes or so. So I'll try to get it like the going through the syllabus and the intro stuff took a little longer than I expected, but um, so sorry if we go over for a few minutes, but I'll try to get this chapter 2 done here. So market equilibrium. Okay, so we talked all about supply and all about demand, and so you know that if you put your demand curve and your supply curve on the same plane, where this is price and this is quantity, then in theory there's some price in which the quantity supplied equals the quantity demanded, which would be the market price. So this would be the market price, and this would be the market quantity. So this is your nice graphical representation of market equilibrium, where supply equals demand at this quantity and this price. Okay, and then um, let's briefly talk about price ceilings and price floors. Okay, so a price ceiling is a minimum price, or sorry, a maximum price at which the market can charge. And so if this is the typical example here for a price ceiling, I think, is rent control. Okay, so if this is the price of renting rental units, and this is the quantity, in some instances in like urban areas in some parts of Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Manhattan or Brooklyn, in inner cities, you can see a situation in which there's a rent control uh, government law, which means that they put a ceiling on the price that can be charged for that rental unit. And the idea here is that if you lock the price at this amount, you might end up with a shortage because there's people that are willing to pay higher prices that aren't able to get that, and there's obviously firms that would supply at higher prices that can't. So if you impose a price ceiling and it comes in below the market clearing price, the idea here is that you have so here's your price ceiling, right, which is below the market price, and so here's supply and here's demand. So obviously at a lower price, demand is higher than supply because there's more people that want to rent at that lower price but cannot. So basically with a rent control situation, you get a shortage because the consumers and suppliers here aren't able to exchange rental units. And the people that get the rent control unit get a benefit because they pay a lower price. But there's often in a rent control or price ceiling situation, there's a shortage of rental units or a shortage of whatever thing you're looking at for the ceiling. Okay, and then other government aspect that you can look at here is price floors. Okay, and a typical example of a price floor would be a minimum wage situation. Okay, so a price floor is imposed is a minimum. You can't go below the floor, so it's the minimum you can charge for a good or service. So if this is a minimum wage representation, this is the price of labor, this is the quantity, and then this is the supply of labor, which is firms, and this is, I'm sorry, the supply of labor, which is workers, and this is the demand for labor, which is firms. So the uh, economic interpretation here is that if you impose a minimum wage above what the market clearing price would be, you might have a surplus where at this higher price, there's more people willing to work, okay, than can be supplied. All right, so this is the supply of workers. This is the demand for workers, which is firms. So at this price, here's the surplus because this portion of the market isn't allowed to interchange. And so there's obviously other arguments for the minimum wage where it's you want to have a, a minimum wage that's a living wage or suitable for people who are working at minimum wage. But the idea here is that you might have a surplus in which there's more workers that want to work at that wage that um, cannot get jobs. Okay, so last concept here is comparative statics, which is basically starting with the equilibrium and changing something like shifting demand or shifting supply or shifting both. So let's look briefly at changes in demand, changes in supply, and then changes in both. All right, so if you look here, this is if we start with point A, which would be the initial equilibrium, and we have an increase in demand, right? It goes this way. Okay, then if you have an increase in demand, that's gonna the new result at this initial supply curve and the higher demand curve is going to be a higher price and a higher market outcome or a higher quantity. So if demand goes up for a good or service, they're willing to pay more. You kind of go this way, this shifts to the right. And at D1, you get a point where the consumers will pay a higher price and suppliers would happily go up the supply curve and supply it. And so starting at point A, increase in demand, the outcome is higher price, higher quantity. Okay, what about if you have a change in supply? So point A is the initial equilibrium, and let's say that we have I don't know, there's a tax. So if there's a tax, that makes it more costly for suppliers. A decrease in supply goes here, this way, from S0 to S1. And if you start at point A, and the only thing we look at is a decrease in supply due to a tax, the result is we go up the demand curve here to point B, and the price is higher, and output or market quantity is lower. Okay? So we're going from A to B. Due to the only thing that changes was the tax and the decrease in supply, the result is a higher market price and a higher quantity. So the point is, if you have one of the curves shift, you can easily figure out the resulting change. But what if both? It's typical or often when demand changes, supply changes as well, or vice versa. So if both curves, so look at this mess here. If both curves change, you got to kind of figure out what the result is. And the nice thing here is there's this nice little table 2.2, which shows basically the outcomes here. So if you look at two curves changing, here's an increase in supply and an increase in demand. Here's a decrease in supply and an increase in demand. So the result of both things changing is shown here, where basically if both curves increase, there's going to be a higher market quantity, right? If demand and supply both go up, but the effect on price is ambiguous because you don't know which effect dominates, okay? And the idea is that if demand goes up, they'll pay higher prices. If supply goes up, they're willing to supply at lower prices. So depending on which curve is a bigger shift in magnitude, you don't know unless you have like the actual information. So if this goes up and this goes up, all you can determine is that the market price is going up and the price change is ambiguous. Okay? And then for, let's say, the decrease in supply and an increase in demand. Okay? The result there would be that if demand goes up, they'll pay higher prices. If supply goes down, they need higher prices, so that's going to push the price up. We know that. But we don't know which, if the increase in demand or the decrease in supply is going to affect the market. So that's ambiguous unless we have more information. So the point is, for all these four cases, if demand goes up or down and supply goes up or down, the outcome depends on what you know for sure and what depends on the magnitudes of the shifts. So we went through these two. And if supply goes up and demand goes down, then the quantity is ambiguous because demand's going up and supply is going down. But you know that if supply goes up, sorry, if supply goes up, they'll supply at lower prices. If demand goes down, they need lower prices, so that's going to push the price down, right? And the final one, decrease in supply, decrease in demand. Um, we know that you know that the new market quantity is going to go down because both curves are going down, but you don't know when demand goes down, they need lower prices. When supply goes down, they need higher prices. We don't know which effect dominates, and so that's ambiguous. And so you can look here at the table to determine what you know for sure and what you don't know, what's ambiguous based on both curves shifting. Okay. Now let's just let's look at a couple examples, and then we'll wrap this up. So I went through a lot of those concepts kind of quick, and hopefully we got all the information and you understand all the concepts. But any questions before we look at some examples? Okay. Um, all right. So last thing here, if you open up the under chapter 1 through 2, if you open up the chapter 2 document, let's just go through a couple examples. Then I'll show you your homework, and then we'll be done. Okay, so can we see that? So here's just a couple examples from chapter 2, and you'll have, I think, one of these on your homework assignment. So there's a couple optional videos you can look at. And so this is number 6 from, I think, the back of chapter 2, which is, well, it's the equations. I changed the question a little bit, but let's, here's the example. Let's suppose demand and supply are given by this linear demand function and this linear supply function. Okay, so part A, just solve for the equilibrium price and quantity. Okay, so to do that, just set this, all right, so at equilibrium, the quantity supplied equals the quantity demanded, right? So just set demand equal to supply and find the price that sets those equal. Okay, so this equal to this, and then find the price. So here's demand, 50 minus P, and here's supply, 1/2 P minus 10. Now let's find the P, the price, which solves this identity. So let's solve for price. Okay. So 50 minus p equals 1 half p minus 10. Let's let's add p to both sides, and we get 3 halves p. And if we add 10 to both sides, we get 50 plus 10 is 60. So we get 3 halves p equals 60. And then multiply both sides by 2/3, we get p equals 2/3 minus 60. And we get p equals 120 divided by 3, and 120 divided by 3 is market price is 40. Okay, now just find the equilibrium quantity, which is plug in that price into both the supply and demand curve and determine that that's the same quantity. So plug in this into here. So in the demand curve, we get 50 minus p. 50 minus a price of 40 is 10, okay? What about supply? We plug in, here's our supply curve, 1 half p minus 10. Plug in the price of 40. We get 1 half 40 minus 10, which is 20 minus 10, which is 10. So at the price of 40, demand is 10, supply is 10, which means our market quantity is 10, and our market clearing price is 40. So P star is 40, Q star is 10. And then part B, state the effect of an increase in demand and a decrease in supply. What happens to Q star and P star? So basically, you can just look at the chart I showed you. Okay, this one here. So for your homework question or for this type of question, you can pull up or you can look at your current textbook, or you can pull up the older edition I have here, the PDF, right there under PowerPoint on Blackboard, the 7th edition, the PDF. If you look at table 2.2, this will tell you the outcome of the question. So if you're looking for increase in supply, increase in demand, there's your outcome, and then vice versa. So in this case, state the effect of an increase in demand and a decrease in supply. So increase in demand, decrease in supply is this outcome here. So price increases, and quantity is ambiguous, or I use the word indeterminate, which is the same thing. So this is your outcome here. Price increases, quantity is ambiguous or indeterminate. Okay, so one more and then we're done. Suppose demand and supply are given by these linear functions and solve for the equilibrium price and quantity. So just set demand equal to supply and solve for price. So here's demand, here's supply. What did I do here? I just add 1 half p to both sides and add a half to both sides, and we get 3/4 p equals 15 halves. Multiply both sides by 4/3, we get 4/3. P equals 4/3 times 15 halves, and we get P equals 60 over 6, which is 10. So price of 10, and then find the quantity. Put the price of 10 into the demand curve, 70 minus 1 half P, and we get, 7 minus 1 half P, and we get 7 minus 1 half price of 10, 7 minus 5, and we get a quantity of 2. Okay, so double check on the supply curve, which is 1/4 P minus 1 half. Plug in 1/4 price of 10 minus 1 half, and we get 2.5 minus a half, which is 2.5 minus 0.5, which is 2. Okay, so Q is 2. Q is 2 at that price. So we determine that the market price Q star is 2. Sorry, the market price is 10, and the market quantity Q star is 2. Then B state the effect of a decrease in demand and a decrease in supply. What happens to Q and P? You can look at the chart again if you want. Okay, demand goes down, supply goes down. Decrease in demand, decrease in supply. Here we go. Price is ambiguous or indeterminate, and quantity decreases. Okay. All right. Questions on these ones here?
So I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep.
Okay, cool. So the part B for both of the problems, they don't necessarily have to do with the problem. It's just a question, and we just have to look at that chart.
Yeah, so you have to look at the chart, or just kind of, yeah. So I'm just trying to get you to understand that when like both curves shift, that one of the outcomes of the variables is known for sure, and one is indeterminate. And so you can kind of think through it, like, or if you need a reference, you can look at the chart. So like, for example, for this one, part B on number 6, if there's an increase in demand and a decrease in supply, so if you think about it like intuitively, you can confirm it with the chart, but like if demand goes up and supply goes down, so we don't know the magnitudes, like how much demand goes up and how much supply goes down. So because one of the curves is going up and one's going down, the effect on output or quantity is going to be unknown or indeterminate or ambiguous. But you can figure out what happens to the other variable, because if you think about this one, if demand goes up, that means the consumers will pay higher prices. If supply goes down, that means the firms need higher prices to supply. So this pushes upward pressure on the price. This pushes upward pressure on the price. So if you think about it, this has to go up. So when you get the part B's here with the two things changing, all I want you to do is think about which change you know for sure and which change is indeterminate. And if you, yeah, so you can think through it, or if you can look at the chart to kind of confirm your analysis there. But yeah, I guess the question is, part B doesn't really have to do with the linear demand functions. It's just this is a quantitative part, and this is just a qualitative, conclusion.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so everyone good on this, the rest of this? So you can look at this as a reference. And again, the table, if you need table 2.2, it's there in the PDF version of the textbook. Okay, so last thing is, let me just pull up the homework, which is going to be next week, and then we'll wrap this up. So here's the chapters 1 through 2. If you open up homework, chapters 1 through 2, this is the assignment that I want you to do for next week. Okay, so here's your homework for chapters 1 through 2, and you have one on net present value. So there's a little example there, and we had a nice example there we went through. You can use that. You have one, number 2 on net benefits, and then number 3 on supply and demand. So 3 questions. We went through nice examples of each, but net present value and net benefits, and then the supply and demand. Okay, so everyone good on what I want you to do here for the homework? And you should have some nice examples that you can refer to that we kind of went through in class. All right. And then this homework assignment, okay, again, is going to be due. It's due next Monday, like on the syllabus, and you're going to post it here, click on discussions, click on homework chapter 1 through 2, and then you're going to create a thread and post your homework. And if you can post it as a Word document, or if you want to do, if you don't have to, you can do your homework like by hand on a piece of paper, or with graphing paper if that's preferable. If you do it that way, just try to either convert it to a PDF would be easier, or if you have to, you can post your pictures. But the the easiest way for me to see to grade the homeworks is if you post a Word document or a PDF. So if you can try to do that, and just post your completed homework assignments here. So here it is. Create a thread and just post it. Uh, okay. Um, okay. So that's about it for today. And just a reminder, if you look at the syllabus, so we have another meeting. So there's a meeting every Monday at 6 o'clock. All right, like the schedule says, and it should be already set up with the WebEx meeting schedule. And so you should get a reminder, and it's the same web link. So just every Monday at 6 o'clock. And sorry I went over a little bit. I'll try to keep it to around 2 hours, but I spent a little too much time on the intro and stuff. But normally the lectures will be about 2 hours, and so hopefully I didn't lose any concentration here. But thanks for sticking around. So for next week we'll do chapter 3, which is quantitative demand analysis, and we'll talk about some elasticity stuff and do some data analysis. And also, we're going to use Excel next time. So make sure you have, if you're going to be doing it together in class, then you have the ability to use Excel, Microsoft Excel. And then also next week, homework chapter 1 and 2, which I just showed you, do that. Okay. So I think that's it for tonight. Um, First homework due next week in the discussion forum, and if you want to read ahead, we're doing chapter 3 and elasticity. Okay, so I think that's what I had planned, and thank you guys for joining. I'll see you next week, same time, and have a good rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.